Senior Monitor Zixtal's fourth appendage tapped rhythmically against the crystalline console, creating a gentle chime that echoed through the observation post's curved chamber. Another quiet shift monitoring the ancient barrier was drawing to a close, just like the thousands before it. The massive energy field shimmered in the main viewport, its iridescent surface stretching endlessly across the stars. The barrier had stood for 50,000 years, its purpose debated by generations of council scholars. Most agreed it served as a containment field for primitive species that weren't ready for galactic society. Zixtal had always found that explanation lacking. Why would the precursors expend such vast resources to isolate a single world? A soft chime interrupted the monitor's contemplation. The sound was different from the usual system alerts, higher-pitched, almost musical. Zixtal's secondary eyes focused on the environmental readings while the primary set remained fixed on the barrier. Something was changing. System, enhance Sector 7 Gamma, Zixtal commanded, voice steady despite mounting excitement. The holographic display zoomed in, showing impossible readings. The barrier's energy pattern was shifting, its usual smooth quantum frequency developing a localized resonance. Warning indicators bloomed across the displays in brilliant golden light. Zixtal's respiratory sacs expanded in shock as a section of the barrier began to ripple like liquid metal. The impossible was happening. Something was coming through. Central Command, this is Observation Post Zenith. Zixtal transmitted, all four hands flying across the control surfaces. We have an anomaly at coordinates 2-7-4 Mark 3-8-9. The barrier is being breached. The emergence point sparkled with cascading energy as a vessel pushed through the barrier. Its design was unlike anything in the Council database, sleek and angular, with pulsing blue drive signatures that somehow matched the barrier's own frequency. It was neither a crude attempt at spaceflight, nor a precursor artifact. This was something entirely new. Impossible. Zixtal whispered, secondary eyes rapidly scanning the sensor data. The energy readings, they're harmonizing with the barrier itself. System, identify vessel configuration. Configuration unknown, the system replied. Drive signature unregistered. However, life sign analysis indicates. The computer paused, as if double-checking its own readings. Life signs are human in origin. Zixtal's chromatophores flashed pale blue in shock. Humans, the primitive species from the quarantined world. The same humans whose civilization had barely mastered basic atomic theory when last observed. The vessel completed its emergence, the barrier settling back to its normal state behind it. Its hull gleamed under the light of distant stars, revealing markings in human script. More impossible readings flooded the displays. The ship's technological level far exceeded anything expected from a newly spacefaring race. Incoming transmission, the system announced. Source, unknown vessel. Zixtal hesitated only for a moment before accepting the communication. A holographic interface materialized, showing the human face. The being smiled. A gesture Zixtal recognized from xenological studies as indicating peaceful intent. Greetings, Observation Post Zenith, the human said in perfect council standard. This is the United Earth ship Prometheus, requesting permission to approach. We come in peace and hope to open diplomatic relations. As emergency alerts cascaded through the Council's communication network and support vessels rushed to the sector, Zixtal realized that everything was about to change. The quarantine zone had been breached not by force, but by understanding. The humans hadn't broken through the barrier. They had learned its language and asked it to let them pass. In that moment, looking at the confident smile of the human captain and the elegant ship that defied all expectations, Zixtal understood why the precursors had gone to such lengths to isolate Earth. The question was no longer about containing humanity. It was about whether the galaxy was ready for them. The docking procedure was a dance of precision that left the Council's engineering team speechless. The human vessel, a sleek arrangement of angular surfaces and pulsing energy conduits, matched the station's rotation with fluid grace. No rookie spacefaring race should have achieved such masterful control over gravitational dynamics. High Counselor Vexrim watched through the observation window as the docking arm extended to meet the UES Prometheus. Their emergency session had barely begun when the ship's captain had transmitted complete technical specifications for the docking procedure, specifications that somehow improved upon the Council's own protocols. "They're not just advanced," muttered Chief Engineer Clarix, their spiral antennae twitching with excitement. "They're innovative. Look at how they've modified the standard approach vector to reduce energy consumption by 30%. The airlock cycled, drawing all eyes to the entrance. Captain Sarah Chen stepped through with an air of quiet confidence, wearing a midnight blue uniform adorned with silver insignias. She carried herself with the poise of a diplomat, but had the alert eyes of an explorer. 2 crew members flanked her, each carrying what appeared to be data tablets. "Honorable Council members," Chen said, bowing slightly. "On behalf of United Earth, I thank you for this audience. We have much to discuss." Vexrim's outer membrane rippled with barely contained curiosity. "Indeed we do, Captain. Beginning with how your species managed to breach a precursor barrier that has contained your world for 50 millennia." Chen smiled, activating her tablet with a gesture. A holographic display blossomed in the chamber center, showing complex wave patterns that shimmered like the barrier itself. "We didn't breach it," she explained, manipulating the display. "We learned to speak its language. The barrier isn't a wall. It's a lock, and every lock has a key. We simply needed to understand the question it was asking." The display shifted, showing the evolution of human understanding. Years of quantum observations, pattern analysis, and theoretical breakthroughs flashed by in simplified form. The Council scientists present leaned forward, their various sensory organs fixed on the data with intense focus. "Our phase harmony drive," Chen continued, "doesn't fight against spacetime. It resonates with it. The same principle allowed us to match the barrier's frequency and request passage. The precursors built it to keep out those who would force their way through, but they left a door for those who would knock first." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just achieved faster-than-light travel. They'd developed an entirely new approach to physics. While council races had spent millennia refining existing precursor technologies, humans had started fresh, seeing possibilities where others saw only barriers. "We come seeking friendship," Chen said, her voice carrying easily in the now silent chamber. "Earth has dreamed of the stars for as long as we've looked up at them. Now that we can reach them, we want to learn, to share, to grow together with the galactic community." She gestured, and her officers stepped forward, offering their tablets to the Council's scientific team. "As a gesture of good faith, we've brought detailed technical specifications for certain technologies we believe could benefit all species. Nothing military, just improvements in medical science, environmental systems, and energy efficiency." Vexrim accepted one of the tablets, multiple eyes widening at the contents. These weren't just minor improvements. These were revolutionary approaches to problems the Council had grappled with for generations, and humanity was simply giving them away as a greeting gift. "Captain," Vexrim said carefully, "I believe this may be the beginning of a most interesting relationship between our peoples." Chen's smile widened slightly. "Honorable Counselor, I believe it's the beginning of a new era for all of us. After all, the stars have plenty of room for everyone who wants to dance among them." The crystalline archives hummed with ancient power, casting prismatic light across Research Director Lin Tei's scaled face. Her claws moved delicately across the control surface, each gesture unlocking another layer of data that had waited millennia to be discovered. The human revelation had prompted the Council to grant unprecedented access to the deepest sectors of the precursor archives. "Display temporal marker 52,000 years," she commanded. The holographic matrix shifted, reconstructing a scene from before the barrier's creation. A precursor stood before a council of its own kind, its energy form rippling with what their translation suggested was excitement. "The specimens on the third planet are extraordinary. The ancient being's words scrolled across Lin-Tei's display. Their neural plasticity exceeds anything in our database. They adapt not through genetic modification, but through behavioral changes that can occur within a single lifetime. Lin-Tei's assistant, Delpor, looked up from his own console. Director, I'm finding similar reports across multiple research stations. The precursors devoted significant resources to studying early humans. Another recording materialized, showing a different precursor researcher. They solve problems differently. When faced with an obstacle, they don't simply seek to overcome it. They reimagine the entire scenario. We presented a test group with our standard logic puzzle. Instead of solving it as designed, they created 5 alternative solutions we hadn't considered. Lin-Tei's tail twitched with excitement as she dove deeper into the archives. The precursors' fascination with humanity became clearer with each record. They hadn't seen a primitive species to be contained. They had recognized something unprecedented in the galaxy. Cross-reference completed, Delpor announced. I found the barrier authorization records. His voice trembled slightly. Director, you need to see this. The central display filled with technical specifications and debate records. The barrier hadn't been designed as a prison. It was a protection system. The precursors had recognized humanity's potential and decided to preserve it, shielding Earth from external influences until humans could reach the stars on their own terms. Play final authorization statement, Lin-Tei ordered, her heart's beating faster. A senior precursor appeared, its energy form complex with overlapping patterns that their best linguists interpreted as profound conviction. We hereby authorize Project Chrysalis. The barrier will stand until they are ready. Humanity must develop naturally, without the shortcuts we provided to other species. Their greatest strength is not their intelligence or their adaptability. It is their ability to take unexpected paths to remarkable destinations. Lin-Tei sank back in her support cradle, mind racing. The council races had all been guided, their evolution carefully shaped by precursor intervention. Humans were different. They had developed in isolation, finding their own way to the stars. Director, Delpor's voice interrupted her thoughts. There's more. The precursors left a message specifically for the moment of humanity's emergence. Should I play it? Lin-Tei whispered. The holographic matrix hummed, reconstructing one final scene. A precursor elder stood before them, its form calm and dignified. If you are seeing this, they have found their way through the barrier, not by force, but by understanding. This alone proves our calculations correct. Humanity is ready not just to join galactic civilization, but to help guide it toward new horizons. Where we saw walls, they will see doors. Where we built barriers, they will build bridges. The message continued, but Lin-Tei was already reaching for her communicator. The council needed to know immediately. The barrier wasn't a quarantine. It was an incubator. The precursors hadn't feared humanity's potential for destruction. They had protected humanity's potential for creation. As she transmitted her findings, Lin-Tei glanced at the final lines of the precursor's message scrolling across her display. To those who inherit our legacy, learn from them as we have. The galaxy's next great adventure is about to begin. The council station's warning sirens pulsed in a soft, melodic pattern that belied the seriousness of the situation. Chief Engineer Clarix's antennae twisted in frustration as another standard repair sequence failed to stabilize the gravity generators. Around them, objects began to drift slightly, the artificial gravity fluctuating in unpredictable waves. Run the diagnostic sequence again, they ordered, their engineering team moving through the practice steps with perfect precision. Each species had their designated role, refined over centuries of cooperation. The Vaxian crystalsmiths monitored quantum alignments, while Meraxian flowtechs managed the energy distribution. Everything was being done exactly according to procedure, and everything was failing. Fascinating approach, a voice commented from the doorway. James Rodriguez, one of the human engineers from the Prometheus, stood watching the organized chaos with curious eyes. Mind if I take a look? Clarix's first instinct was to refuse. The station's systems were far too complex for a newcomer to comprehend, especially one from a species that had just achieved interstellar travel. But the gravity fluctuations were getting worse. "You may observe," Clarix conceded, their antennae indicating skepticism. Rodriguez didn't just observe. He moved through the chamber asking questions that at first seemed embarrassingly basic. Why were the gravity plates arranged in that particular pattern? What determined the power flow sequence? Had anyone ever tried a different configuration? "Your systems are incredibly advanced," Rodriguez said, studying a holographic display of the station's architecture. "But sometimes complexity creates its own problems. Look at this power distribution network. It's like a river delta with too many branches." He pulled out his tablet, sketching a simplified diagram. "In our early space stations, we learned that redundancy doesn't always mean reliability. Sometimes it just means more points of failure." Clarix's skepticism began to shift toward interest. The human wasn't suggesting they abandon their advanced technology. He was offering a different perspective on how to use it. "What if," Rodriguez continued, "we treat the gravity network more like a circulation system than a power grid? Instead of pushing energy through every plate simultaneously, we could create a rolling wave pattern. Each section pulls energy from the one before it, like a heart's pumping blood." The Meraxian flow-techs raised their eye stalks in surprise. The idea was elegantly simple, yet none of them had considered it. Their training had always focused on maintaining the existing system's complex balance. It would require reprogramming the quantum regulators, Clarix noted, their antennae now showing cautious optimism. "Actually," Rodriguez smiled, "we might not need to. Those regulators are already capable of variable power distribution, right? We just need to change the timing sequence, like teaching dancers to move in a new pattern." The next 30 minutes were a flurry of activity as the combined engineering team implemented Rodriguez's suggestion. The human worked seamlessly alongside alien colleagues, his excitement for the project breaking down professional barriers faster than any diplomatic protocol. When they activated the modified system, the change was immediate. The gravity stabilized, the power efficiency improved by 20%, and several chronic alignment issues resolved themselves. "How did you think of this?" Clarix asked, their antennae now curved in respect. Rodriguez shrugged. "Humans have a saying. Sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. When you've worked with a system for too long, it's easy to forget that there might be simpler solutions. We're used to making do with less, so we look for efficiency first." As the engineering team began documenting the improvements, Clarix realized they were witnessing something remarkable. Humanity hadn't just mastered advanced technology. They had maintained their ability to think around problems rather than just through them. The station's gravity now flowed as smoothly as a river, its rhythm a constant reminder that progress sometimes meant looking at old problems with new eyes. Crimson emergency lighting bathed the station's corridors as ancient systems stirred to life. Warning messages in precursor script cascaded across every display surface, their angular symbols pulsing with increasing urgency. Deep within the station's core, mechanisms that had slept for 50,000 years began to wake. Multiple breach protocols detected. The station's AI announced in its melodic voice, "Precursor defense grid activating. All non-registered vessels will be targeted. Time to weapons lock. 3 minutes." Security Chief Mira Wong watched the situation unfold from the emergency command center, her fingers dancing across holographic controls. Around her, the Council's best technical experts worked frantically to access the ancient systems. "We can't shut it down," Senior Technician Vrex reported, their crystalline form flickering with stress patterns. "The precursor authorization codes are quantum-locked. Even our highest clearance protocols are being rejected." Wong's eyes narrowed as she studied the spreading web of activated systems. The defense grid was treating the Prometheus and its crew as an unauthorized breach of quarantine, exactly as it had been programmed to do millennia ago. But there was something odd about the way the system was behaving. "It's not just targeting us," she realized. Look at the pattern. It's running a full reactivation sequence. If these systems come fully online, they'll enforce the original quarantine protocols on everything in the sector. Young Telak, a junior technician from the station's engineering staff, raised all four of their hands. The system is approaching problems the same way it was programmed to. But what if we could show it a different perspective, like Engineer Rodriguez did with the gravity systems? Wang's expression shifted to a slight smile. You're thinking like a human now. We don't need to break into the system. We need to communicate with it. She opened a channel to the Prometheus. Captain, we need your linguistics team. Now. The next 2 minutes were a blur of activity as human language experts worked alongside alien technical specialists. They weren't trying to crack the precursor code. They were trying to understand its underlying logic. Look at this, Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the Prometheus's chief linguist, pointed to a pattern in the system's response codes. It's not just a security protocol. It's a dialogue. The system is asking questions, and it's activating defenses because it doesn't like the answers. 1 minute to weapons lock. The AI reminded them pleasantly. Wang made a decision. Stop trying to override it. Let's answer its questions instead. Her fingers flew across the interface, inputting a new type of response. Instead of providing authorization codes, she began feeding the system information about human development, cultural exchange, and peaceful contact. 30 seconds to weapons lock. Telak caught on, adding data about the collaborative gravity system solution. Other technicians joined in, each contributing evidence of positive interaction and growth. The defense grid's angry red pulses began to hesitate, its patterns growing uncertain. 10 seconds to weapons lock. Come on, Wang whispered. Look at what we're showing you. This is exactly what you were waiting for. The countdown reached 3 seconds and stopped. The crimson emergency lighting faded to a soft blue. New messages scrolled across the displays, this time in multiple languages including Council Standard. Query satisfied. The AI announced. Species development parameters exceeded. Cultural integration protocols optimal. Updating quarantine status to graduated. Welcome, children of Earth. You have grown well. The tension in the command center broke like a wave, replaced by a mixture of relief and amazement. Wang found herself embracing Telak, while Dr. Mitchell wiped tears of joy from her eyes. How did you know it would work? Vrex asked, their crystal form now glowing with calm blues and greens. Wang smiled. We remembered what the archives taught us. The precursors didn't want to keep us out. They wanted to make sure we were ready to join in. Sometimes the best way past a barrier is to show you understand why it was put there in the first place. Research Director Lin Tai stood motionless as the holographic simulation filled the archive chamber. Streams of data formed intricate patterns in the air, each thread representing a possible future that the precursors had calculated. At her side, Captain Chen watched with equal fascination as 50,000 years of predictions unfolded before them. The simulations were running this entire time, Lin Tai explained, her scaled hands moving through the data streams. Every achievement, every innovation your species made was analyzed and incorporated into the model. Watch what happens when we follow this thread. The display shifted, showing humanity's first steps into space. But unlike the controlled expansion of council species, human development exploded in unexpected directions. Where others built outposts, humans created gardens in space. Where traditional colonization called for terraform, humans adapted themselves instead. Your species doesn't just grow, Lin Tai observed. You catalyze growth in others. Look at this interaction model. The simulation showed a human colony sharing borders with a crystalline species. Within decades, both populations had developed entirely new architectural styles, blending human creativity with crystal growth patterns to create structures neither species would have conceived alone. Chen leaned forward, studying a particular data stream. These calculations suggest we would have achieved faster than light travel even without finding the barrier's resonance pattern. 3 different ways. Actually, Lintai confirmed. The precursors predicted your species would discover at least 7 possible approaches to superluminal travel within your first millennium of space exploration. We've only found 2 in 50,000 years. The simulation continued, showing ripples of innovation spreading across predicted trade routes. Human art influenced alien architecture. Earth music theory led to breakthroughs in quantum mathematics. Even human cooking techniques sparked revolutions in xenobiology. Here's what fascinated them most. Lintai said, isolating a particular pattern. Your species doesn't innovate in a linear fashion. You create connection points that allow others to innovate in ways unique to them. You don't just climb the technology tree. You help others discover their own paths up it. The display shifted to a series of probability clouds, each representing potential futures. Unlike the carefully managed growth curves of council species, humanity's influence created beautiful chaos, a cascade of possibilities that even the precursor's most advanced systems struggled to predict. They called it the butterfly effect, Chen said softly. The idea that small changes can have enormous consequences. A butterfly flaps its wings in Brazil, and weeks later, a tornado forms in Texas. Lintai's scales shifted color in recognition. Yes, that's exactly what the simulations show. But it's not just chaos. It's productive chaos. Your species creates. What's the term? Possibility spaces. You make things possible simply by believing they might be. The final simulation sequence showed a galaxy transformed. Not conquered, not unified, but diversified. Species that had once developed along carefully planned lines were exploring new directions. Ancient technologies were being reimagined rather than simply refined. The precursors didn't quarantine us because they feared we would destroy anything. Chen realized, watching the patterns unfold. They were protecting our ability to imagine things they never could. And protecting us, in a way, Lintai added. The council races needed time to mature, to become secure enough in our own development that we could embrace change rather than fear it. The barrier wasn't just incubating Earth, it was giving the galaxy time to prepare for humanity's emergence. As the simulation faded, both leaders stood in thoughtful silence. The future spreading before them wasn't a simple matter of technological exchange or diplomatic relations. It was the beginning of a transformation that would touch every species, every culture, every individual who looked up at the stars and dared to dream differently. The question now, Chen said quietly, is whether we're all ready for what comes next. Lintai's scales rippled with anticipation. I don't think anyone can be truly ready for this kind of change. Perhaps that's exactly why it's necessary. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council hummed with tension as representatives from 1,000 worlds gathered for the most important vote in recent history. The normally ordered seating arrangements had dissolved into informal clusters as species grouped themselves according to their positions on the human question. Elder Ix of the crystalline mines floated in their containment field, prismatic surface refracting the chamber's light into complex patterns. As the oldest of the council races, their vote would carry tremendous weight. They had watched civilizations rise and fall, seen countless species take their first steps into space. But they had never seen anything quite like humanity. The evidence speaks for itself. High Counselor Vexarim addressed the chamber. The simulations, the archives, the recent events on this very station, all point to humanity's unique potential. Yet we must consider the implications carefully. The chamber's holographic displays showed 3 distinct voting options: full integration of humanity into galactic society, limited contact under strict oversight, or reinstatement of the quarantine with expanded barriers. Order is the foundation of civilization, declared Ambassador Kelthor of the Meraxian Confederation, their eye stalks pulsing with conviction. We have prospered for millennia through careful, measured progress. Humanity's chaos, however productive it might seem, threatens that stability. Murmurs of agreement rippled through one section of the chamber. The conservative faction had grown stronger as reports of human innovation spread. Fear of change was a powerful motivator. And yet, countered Research Director Lin Tai. That very stability has led to stagnation in many areas. When was the last time any of our species truly created something new, rather than simply refining what the precursors left us? Elder Ix's crystalline surface shifted, capturing everyone's attention. The crystalline minds rarely spoke during council sessions, preferring to observe and contemplate. Their thoughts emerged as harmonics in the chamber's audio field, translated into words that carried the weight of eons. We remember our own emergence. The harmonic voice resonated. We were not guided by the precursors. Like humanity, we evolved through chance and chaos, through patterns that seemed random but contained deep meaning. Our consciousness arose from crystal lattices that should not have produced thought. Yet here we are. The chamber fell silent as Elder Ix continued, their surface now displaying complex fractals that mirrored their thoughts. We see in humanity something familiar, the beauty of unexpected outcomes. Their chaos is not destructive but generative. They do not merely adapt to environments. They imagine new possibilities for those environments. They do not simply solve problems. They redefine the parameters of what is possible. The displays shifted, showing footage from the recent crisis. Humans and aliens working together, finding solutions that neither would have conceived alone. The gravity system modifications that now served as a model for stations across council space. The diplomatic exchanges that had already sparked cultural revolutions on dozens of worlds. Change comes whether we welcome it or not. Elder Ix's harmonics grew richer, more complex. The question is whether we face it with fear or with hope. Humanity's gift is not their technology or their adaptability. It is their ability to see wonder where we see worry, to find joy in the unknown rather than fear. The chamber's atmosphere shifted palpably as the crystalline mind's words resonated with representatives of younger species. Even some of the conservative faction seemed swayed by the elder race's perspective. We were children once, Elder Ix concluded, their fractals forming a pattern that somehow suggested both order and chaos intertwined. Perhaps it is time to remember how to play, to explore, to imagine without boundaries. Our vote is not just about humanity's future. It is about who we wish to become. The universe is vast, and there are still so many dances left to learn. As the voting preparations began, the chamber buzzed with anticipation. The next few moments would shape not just humanity's destiny, but the future of all species who looked up at the stars and dared to dream of something new. The council chamber erupted in shimmers of light as species expressed their joy in their own unique ways. The crystalline minds sparkled with complex fractals of approval, while the bioluminescent Miraxians pulsed in harmonious patterns. The vote had passed with an overwhelming majority. Humanity would be welcomed as full members of the galactic community. Senior Monitor Zixtal watched from the observation deck as celebration pods launched from the station, their light trails forming intricate patterns against the star-filled backdrop. How fitting that even their expressions of joy were creating new forms of art in space. Quite a view, isn't it? Captain Chen appeared beside him, her presence now familiar after the events of the past few days. Though I have to admit, I'm more interested in what happens next. Below them, in one of the station's newly repurposed halls, the first official cultural exchange was already underway. A group of human children who had arrived with the second wave of ships were sitting with young aliens of various species, teaching each other games from their respective worlds. They're playing something called chess using crystal pieces grown by young Miraxians, Zixtal noted, all four eyes focused on the scene. And look, they've modified the rules to incorporate the crystal's natural growth patterns. A young crystal former had just grown a piece that split into two smaller ones, causing delighted gasps from the human children. Instead of declaring it against the rules, they were already discussing how to incorporate this new possibility into the game. That's exactly what fascinated the precursors, Research Director Lin Tai said, joining them at the window. Your species doesn't just adapt to new situations, you embrace them as opportunities for innovation. The discussion was interrupted by a harmonious chime as Elder Ix's containment field approached. The ancient crystalline being's surface rippled with patterns that somehow conveyed both amusement and satisfaction. The children below are already proving our decision wise. Elder Ix's translated thoughts filled the air. They do not see differences as barriers, but as building blocks for something new. Perhaps that is humanity's greatest gift to us all, the reminder that novelty need not be feared. Through another viewport, they could see Engineer Rodriguez working with a mixed team of humans and aliens, applying the principles of the gravity system innovation to other station systems. The success of that simple solution had sparked a revolution in thinking about technology throughout the station. We've already received requests from 50 worlds for human consultation on various projects, Linte reported, her scales shifting through pleased colors. Not for our advanced technology, but for our perspective on their existing challenges. And we have just as many requests from Earth for cultural and scientific exchanges, Chen added. Our artists are particularly excited about learning crystal-forming techniques for new media, and our scientists can't wait to study biological computing. Zixtal's chromatophores rippled with a pattern that translated to thoughtful amusement. When I first detected your ship emerging from the barrier, I never imagined we would end up here. I expected a crisis, perhaps even a conflict. Instead, we found something far more valuable. A new way of seeing the universe. A burst of laughter from below drew their attention back to the children. The chess game had evolved into something entirely new, with pieces moving in 3 dimensions through crystal structures, following rules that blended logic from multiple worlds. It was neither purely human nor purely alien, but something wonderfully, uniquely new. The precursors built the barrier to protect humanity's development. Elder Ix harmonized. But perhaps they were also protecting something else, the spark that comes from genuine discovery, from finding one's own path to the stars. You kept that spark alive, and now you can share it with us all. As the station rotated, the light of 1,000 stars played through the crystalline structures, creating patterns as complex and beautiful as the future stretching out before them. The galaxy was changing, not through force or crisis, but through the simple joy of species learning to see through each other's eyes. The barrier that had stood for 50,000 years was gone, but something far stronger had taken its place. Bridges built from understanding, innovation born from diversity, and the shared excitement of discovering what might come next.